Well, anyhow, I guess until other people join, we can just go ahead and hop on in. So huddles, it's your first huddle. But typically what we do is more of like a Q&A style. Today I wanted to just do something a little different. Oh, here comes someone else. Slowly but surely entering in. Doing something a little different, and I wanted to just chat about the different phases here because this is something that's really insanely important. And I think a lot of people jump into something like this and they just fully expect, okay, I'm going right into a deficit. I'm going to start seeing changes right away. And that's not always how it works. Hey, hey, how are you doing down there? Can you hear me? Fabiola?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, good. Yes, just wanted to make sure.
Sorry, I was having trouble connecting.
Yeah, quite a few of you were. I don't know what was going on with that, but there were a couple of people that like joined the waiting room and then just kind of left. So I don't know. Anyhow, technology, it's a love-hate thing. Um, but we will definitely have time for any type of questions that you ladies have as well. But I really wanted to take today to heavily focus on the different phases of Warrior Babe. What we really focus on, you will see us talk about it quite a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you ladies so you're able to see. Okay, hopefully there's a way I'm able to see if someone like joins in. But okay, so these are essentially, can you ladies see the screen okay? Perfect.
Yes.
Okay, so these are the different phases, and 99% of the time when people start, they start with a retrain, right? And it's not as linear as this. I never want you to think, okay, I'm always going to start in a retrain, I'm always going to go to maintenance, and then fat, and then, or fat cut, and then go right into a build. It doesn't necessarily work that way. It's so dependent on the person, and it's so dependent on the goals. But what I can very confidently say is that 99% of the women that start with us do start with a retrain. And I think this is because so many people come into a program like this and they've been under eating for years or they've been yo-yo dieting. I think I've spoken with both of you in the past about how I don't know where the magical number of 1200 came from, but like that seems to be like this number that people like gravitate towards for whatever reason. And so because of that, you come in and not necessarily realizing, oh, there's Monica. Okay, cool. It does let me know. Hey, Monica, can you hear me? Oh, there she comes. Okay, cool. Perfect. So with a retrain, not necessarily realizing that, okay, hormones are off now, metabolism in general is off. And in order for this to be successful, you have to have your metabolism in check. That is like rule number one before we get into a cut, before we even talk about maintenance, build, any of that, it is all going to be focused on retraining. And the whole kind of science behind that is that you have two hunger hormones. You have leptin and you have ghrelin. So leptin is the hunger hormone that suppresses your appetite. Ghrelin is like the feed me, I'm starving hunger hormone. And so when they work really well together is when your metabolism is really balanced. The issue is if you've been under eating for a certain amount of time or you've done really anything that's going to spike cortisol, it's your just metabolism's going to be just really out of whack, right? And so no matter what you do, your body is putting burning fat on the back burner. It doesn't care about burning fat because burning fat expends energy. And right now, your body's trying to save as much energy as possible, right? And I know I speak so much when it comes to cortisol, but I just think it's so stinking important because as women, we have naturally higher levels of cortisol. And especially as we get older, that cortisol just gets higher and higher. Estrogen starts to get lower. Estrogen is an anti-inflammatory, and so it's kind of just like these hormones almost working against us because anti-inflammatory is getting lower. The thing that inflames us is getting higher, and so we need to get all of this in check. We need to get hunger hormones in check. We need to get your metabolism in check. And I know that everyone hates it when I say this, but the only way to do that is to increase calories. So if you're ever wondering why when you come in and I'm like, guys, we need to start bringing calories up, this is why, right? We are focusing on this retrain period. These dates, I don't want you to get really stuck on these. It's not as black and white as this. It really depends on the individual person. It depends on how long you've been yo-yo dieting, how long you've been under eating. For someone who just started tracking calories and they come in and they're like, Kate, I've been doing 1200 now for 2 months. That's going to look very different than someone who comes in and tells me they've been doing 1,000 calories for 5 years, right? So this is at least 8 weeks. It can be longer. And it's also very dependent on your comfort level because I am never going to be like, I don't care if you're not comfortable. We're moving up calories, right? I will do like very gradual increments up and I really try to push it when I feel like you're ready, but I'm never going to make you do something that you're just not comfortable doing yet within reason. Right. If you're eating 1,000 calories, that's a different conversation, right? Then we definitely need to get that up. So I would say for quite a few people I've worked with, it's been closer to the several months because this isn't just staying at 1 calorie number either. This is that gradual all the way up to your maintenance, right? And that maintenance is going to look different for everyone. This is going to be your body stats. This is going to be your protein consumption because it's dependent on how much muscle mass you have. This number, it varies from person to person. You can't necessarily figure it out with just an online calculator because there's so many other things that go into it. And I think I've told you guys my process before a million times, but in case you forgot, what I like to do is I will first just look at body stats, right? So I look at height, I look at weight, I look at gender, I look at, in terms of just your overall activity levels, come up with a number. That's your very first number, right? From there, I'm going to tweak it because I'm going to look at your food diary and I'm looking for patterns. I'm looking for trends. I'm looking for anything that's going to spike cortisol, that's going to spike insulin. From a nutritional standpoint, what possibly could be influencing your metabolism, influencing hunger hormones. And that number is going to be the second number. And that's where I want you to get to because that is going to be your maintenance, right? But I never start you there. Or I shouldn't say never. 9 times out of 10, I never start people there because if your maintenance is, let's say, 2,400, and you're currently eating 1,200 calories, I'm not going to be like, all right, tomorrow, 2,400, here's your macro breakdown, right? That's not going to go over well. You're definitely going to experience bloating and you're going to hate me. So I always try to meet you with where you're at, which is going to be that retraining period, right? And so we start closer to, maybe I'll try to challenge you of like 13 to 1,400, but I'm not going really beyond that. And we very gradually build up to that 2,400. And maintenance, I know like maintenance just terrifies everyone, but like maintenance, as Nikki puts it, is where the magic happens. And it's so true. This is not a period of gaining or losing weight. And I get this all the time. I get asked all the time, like, why would I want to spend so much time in maintenance? I'm not gaining weight. I'm not losing weight. I'm not, building muscle mass. I'm not doing anything. I'm just kind of like standstill. And like technically from a weight perspective, yes, but you have to think about your metabolism has to be functioning at an optimal level. And if it's not, you're not going to see changes, right? Anyone that comes to me and they're like, I've been in a deficit for 5 years, nothing is working. I'm like, I will tell you exactly why it's not working. It's because guaranteed hormones are not in balance or in check. So that is the whole purpose of maintenance, is to get you to that point where everything's working well together. Because when everything's functioning optimally, your body has the ability to expend extra energy to burn body fat. Is this making sense so far? Do we have any questions in regards to retrain or maintenance? Nope, it's feeling good. Okay, perfect. So again, a lot of people come in and they're in this retrain period. We will very gradually, I usually increase by about 50 to 100. I always try to push for 100. But again, it's very dependent on your comfort level to get you up to maintenance. Maintenance is something that we will spend a few months at. And this is another reason why this program is a year, is because if you see those programs that are 3 months, 4 months, you can't possibly do these things in that small amount of time, right? All you can do at that point is just go right into a fat cut or a fat loss cut, which, as we've talked about, that's not going to work, right? If your metabolism is not balanced out and you just go right into a deficit, you are just further putting your body in this state of stress. And when you are in a state of stress, a few things happen, which I know you guys all know because I talk about it all the time on Loom videos, but I'm going to say it again. It is going to utilize muscle mass for energy and it is going to store body fat because it's almost like wanting to store it for a rainy day. So if you think about, if you're eating, I keep going back to this 1,200 calorie example, but if you're eating 1,200 calories, your body is then expecting, okay, tomorrow's Friday. I ate 1,200 calories today. I'm going to eat 1,200 calories tomorrow, which is not enough. I already know that. So I'm going to store extra energy for tomorrow. Right? Which is obviously not what we want. And as women, it always tends to be in the abdominal and the facial area. That's just where cortisol naturally goes. So it is what's responsible for that like stubborn fat, right? And it's stubborn because you have not given your body the opportunity for your hormones to work with you. So it's stubborn because your hormones are then working against you. They're not wanting to burn fat. Again, it's got a lot on its plate right now, and expending more energy is just not an option. On top of that, you are slowing down your metabolism at a pretty rapid rate. So I always like to use the example, like if you think of everything from like your brain down to the muscles in your toes, everything slowing down, That's what's happening when your metabolism's slowing down. So these are symptoms that we really try to look out for when we do put you into a cut, right? So when you get into a cut, we typically don't go beyond 16 weeks. I think of everyone I worked with, I might have went beyond that like once or twice, but truly we tend to kind of stick in this range. And I know you're probably thinking, what if I don't hit my goals in that 16 weeks? Because it's really healthy to lose about anywhere from goodness, like a quarter of a pound to like 2 pounds in that time period, right? Or in a week time period, not in that entire time period, sorry, in a week time period. So over 16 weeks, you can lose up to 32 pounds and recognizing like, okay, well, maybe I want to lose more than that. Perfect. We're going to bump you back up to maintenance. We'll still stick there for about a month and then bring you back down. If you're curious of the check-in, right, the weekly check-in that we always send out, there's a reason we pick those questions. There's a reason that we are asking about energy levels. There's a reason we ask about hydration, sleep. My personal favorite, which I know you all know because I say it every time, is the hunger cues, right? Hunger cues is going to be the biggest determining factor as to where your metabolism currently is at. If you are not having hunger cues, we have an issue. I get asked a lot, I'm in a cut. I don't want to have hunger cues. Why would I want to feel uncomfortable? Why would I want to be hungry? I'm at maintenance. I shouldn't have them. Wrong. You should have them. If you are not feeling hungry throughout the day, that means your metabolism has started to slow down in response. Leptin and ghrelin, those two hunger hormones, remember, leptin suppresses the appetite. Ghrelin is like the feed me, give me food, right? They need to be balancing well together. And if they're not, that's when that issue arises, right? And that is something that I always want you guys to be transparent with me. When you're answering those questions, it's not just, yeah, hey, I was, hungry, a little bit hungry at dinner. Like, I want you to get descriptive with this. I want you to be like, yes, I was hungry for breakfast, lunch, dinner, or I woke up all week and I just wasn't feeling that hunger, because that is a really important way for me to be able to tell where you are at and where your metabolism's at. And I think it's really important with those check-ins. And it's why we switched up the check-ins for those of you guys who have been here for a bit now. It's why we switched them up very recently. Instead of just, hey, state a win, state your hunger levels, it's now reflect on your wins, reflect on your nutrition. And it's not meant to just be like a time waster. It's meant for us to be able to better gauge where your metabolism's at. So the more detail you can give on those check-ins, the better I can help you with it too, because I'm looking at that list and I'm like, okay, her energy's low. She has no hunger cues. This is not good, right? Her metabolism is starting to get lower. We need to bump her back up to maintenance. And this is also what I meant when I said in the beginning, we don't go in like this linear direction of like retrain to maintenance to cut to build. Like, that's not how it goes, right? And it's so dependent on the person. Some people don't go into a cut, some people don't go into a build. It's really dependent on what your overall goals are here. And just from working with you ladies on the call, I can tell you, I know all of you have different goals in this, and you're going to have different orders with this because you all have different goals you're trying to hit. But I want you to think of maintenance not necessarily as like a phase, but it's more kind of the middle ground of where you're always going to go back in between phases. So we go from a retrain to maintenance. We go to a cut to maintenance. We go to a build to maintenance. So it's always going to be something and then back to maintenance, right? Maintenance is where everything just gets regulated. It is where you want to spend majority of your time. And after this program, it's hopefully where you will just be spending forever at. So any questions in terms of that so far? How are we feeling? Is it overwhelming yet? No. Okay, perfect. All right. So I know, oh, sorry, Fabiola, you unmuted yourself. Did you have a question, girl?
No, I was just gonna say that it is a lot of information, but it's interesting to know the different faces. That was it.
I appreciate that. Um, and I know Nikkiey has actually released quite a few podcasts on this too. So if you guys don't follow Macro Hour, you definitely should. I haven't had a chance to listen to her maintenance one, but she, I believe, just posted this past week, if I remember correctly. So definitely give that one a listen to, especially if you're someone that's like a little skeptical about being in maintenance for a few months. And I know it's not ideal. But truly, this is where everything gets regulated, right? You're not going to see changes unless hormones are working with you. And, again, like I said in the beginning, I think this is where a lot of challenges come into play when people come to a program like this, is they're not recognizing the importance of it. And instead they're like, we live in this instantaneous world, and you just can easily get that mindset of like, okay, I've uprooted my entire life. I should be seeing changes right now. And typically that's not what happens. Sometimes in a retrain, you can absolutely start to see some weight loss and you can absolutely start to see some muscle gain, especially if you're someone that's relatively new, like within the past year to strength training. And I know that you guys have been seeing some changes too for those of you guys who are in a retrain, which is great. But I also want to set the expectation that that's not the goal of a retrain, right? You can absolutely see changes in that period. And for those of you who are getting close to maintenance, I know you do tend to see more changes the closer you get to maintenance. But it's not the goal of this, right? The retrain is literally, we're focusing on non-scale wins. We're focusing on energy levels. We're focusing on hunger cues. We are focusing on getting better sleep, right? It's all of those other aspects of health that I know you guys didn't come here for, but are really important in order to lose body fat, right? If you're not getting enough sleep, guys, kiss these goals goodbye, right? Sleep is insanely important, like insanely important. And if you don't track your sleep, I'm going to highly encourage you to. I'm like such a nerd with it. It's like the only reason I wear an Apple Watch. I really kid you not. I like track my steps occasionally, but like really I track my sleep. And it's the very first thing I do when I wake up is look at my watch. Like I get like so nerdy about it. But my point to that is it's really, really important because sleep is where, especially REM sleep, is where protein synthesis is happening and growth hormone is being produced. So, two things that are imperative for muscle mass growth, especially protein synthesis. So, you could be at the gym 7 days a week, but if you're not getting enough REM sleep, it doesn't matter. You're just continuing to tear at those muscle fibers, right? Every time you're working out, you're tearing muscle fibers. And it sounds bad, but it's not. It's a good thing. It just sounds bad. But the point is, when you're in REM sleep, that's when they come back together and they grow back and they grow back stronger. And that's how you build muscle mass. And remember, that's a huge focus of our program, especially in the retrain and the maintenance and the build phase, is because you're really trying to gain as much muscle mass as you can. Obviously, as we age, we start to just inevitably lose muscle mass. And that's not great, right? Because muscle mass is going to be, oh, I'm sorry. Did you have a question?
No, yes, I did, but you can
I've
finish your
never
thought
seen someone
first.
do that before.
I live in Zoom. I work from home. I was just curious, how do the calorie intake from retrain to maintenance compare?
Oh, that's a great question. So it really truly depends. Hang on, I'm gonna turn on a light real quick. So it's starting to get dark in here. It really depends because for the retrain, we really try to meet you where you're at. So if you were to come in and you're eating again 1,000 calories, I'm gonna challenge you a little bit, but I'm also not gonna make it unrealistic, and I'm also not gonna put a lot of stress on your body. Going from 1,000 to 2,000 overnight is one, unrealistic. Two, you probably are gonna give up after like a day. And three, it's going to just put a lot of stress on your body. It's going to make you bloat. It's not going to be an ideal situation. So it depends on where you're coming from. Right.
Okay.
I think maintenance for a lot of people is a lot higher than they anticipate. So it can seem like a really scary number. And I think, especially with, I keep bringing back the like magical 1,200, but I feel like a lot of people come in and they just get very stuck in that number of 1,200. And so if you were coming in eating that, but your maintenance is 2,400, it is going to be quite a difference to get there. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it was quite vague, but it's hard
No,
to
no, it's okay.
it's hard to pinpoint it exactly. Um, Good question though. Any other questions before we continue on? We feeling okay?
No, but one day when you want to geek out, I work in sleep medicine. It's what I do for a living.
Oh my God, I love it. No, it's so funny because literally we had a team call today and one of my coworkers posted something on Slack about needing help with like sleep specifically for women in menopause. And I sent her this like book of a response and at the end literally wrote like, I'm sorry for like writing you a book. And she talked about it on our call and I'm like, I just nerd out about sleep. I really do. I watched this master class. I'll have to like go back and look up his name, but he is like has his PhD in sleep science, which I didn't know was a thing. Super cool to get your PhD in. But yeah, he does these like 3-4 minute master classes on it and has taught me so much about it. But anyhow, sorry, I digress. We'll move on. Sleep is important. That's what you need to know. Sleep is important for all phases. But in order again to see muscle mass, it is going to be very, very, very important. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about a cut. Again, a cut typically doesn't go beyond that 16 weeks. There have been circumstances I've gone beyond that, but again, you don't have to do just one cut. And I think this is a great time to say, as motivating or potentially unmotivating as this can be, I do get people all the time that send me pictures of Nikkiey. So here's what I'll say with this. Nikkiey, it took her several years to to get to where she's at. She has an incredible body. Girl is jacked. She's talked about in one of her podcasts, it was funny. She talked about how she was like going through TSA and they like stopped, like literally the TSA officer stopped her and was just like, hey, how do I get muscles like that? Which I think is hilarious. But it did take her several years to get to that point. So I do want to make it clear, we really try in this year we're together to give you the tools to be successful, to teach you how to do it. So that way you're like, okay, I went in a cut once, I'm back up at maintenance. Maybe you'll have time for 2 cuts when you're in here, right? Go back up to maintenance, and then maybe your goals will switch and you're like, I want to go into a build now. Cool. You now know how to do that. And you now know the importance of maintenance and what those numbers are. And you know that those numbers could potentially change too. The more muscle mass you have, this number will change. So that's important to know too. So let's go ahead and move on to the build, guys. Okay, so I've had people go into a build for like a month and be like, all right, I'm ready to go back down to maintenance. That's not how this works, right? The build is going to be closer to at least half a year. And I know that sounds terrifying. But again, the whole purpose of the build is we are solely focused on building muscle mass. We are in a surplus. It's not by a ton, right? And I didn't talk about that. With our cut, it's typically anywhere from 300 to like 500. A build can be around the same. Sometimes it's a little bit more, just kind of depending on what your overall goals are and depending on if you're okay with also gaining body fat. Because with a build, as you could probably put together, when you are in a calorie surplus, you're gaining weight. Not a bad thing, right? It's why you guys have probably noticed, I really try to steer clear of scales. And while I do look at weight and I do take that into consideration, if you do a body comp scan instead, I will never look at your weight. I will always focus on your body fat and your muscle mass, because to me, that is so much more valuable than just your weight on the scale, right? So obviously muscle weighs more than fat. With that in mind, you are going to gain weight. A lot of it's going to be muscle mass. Some is going to be body fat. So keep that in mind. When you're in a build, you do also gain body fat. It's not necessarily going to like those like stubborn places, right? Like I know as women, we tend to get it in like the abdominal, like the love handles, the like lower back. It doesn't mean just because we're in a surplus, it's going to those areas, because remember, those are like the areas of hormonal dysregulation. So when we get hormones in check, yes, you might have a little body fat that goes to that area, but it's not going to be like this stubborn area that just never goes away at that point. Is that making sense? Body fat
Hmm.
tends to be just kind of dispersed everywhere, right? And also, depending on how comfortable you are with it, we don't even have to get to that point, right? It could be very, very minimal body fat depending on how much of a surplus we're in, right? Because we do have a good range there that we can go into. But the main focus of this, guys, and it's something I know I've talked to you guys about, is going to be progressive overload. Progressive overload is important for all phases, don't get me wrong. But in the build, I mean, that's the whole point. We want to build muscle mass, right? We want to continue to boost our metabolism up. Oh, and that's what I was saying. Sorry, I got a little sidetracked from when I was talking before, but when we are really focusing on muscle mass, remember, like our muscle mass peaks between like 30, maybe like 35, but it's probably closer to 30. And it's just kind of declining from there. So our goal is we want to try to get it to either maintain or to get it to start going back up. It's never, and this is what I hear all the time too, is people come to me and they're like, I just can't gain muscle mass. Like, I'm 60 years old. I'm not going to gain muscle mass. That is not true, right? It might not be as easy as when you were 20, but you will still absolutely 1000% gain muscle mass. I don't care what age you are, if you're doing the right things, right? Again, it's not going to be as fast as we might want it. We live in this instantaneous world. But it will happen. But progressive overload, again, it's important for everything. It is going to be especially important in a build. So making sure that every single time you do the same workout, you are really fixated on, okay, how am I going to challenge this move today? How am I going to increase time under tension for this particular move? And that should be something that you're thinking about for all moves, right? It might not be something that happens every single time, but I want it in the back of your mind for every single time you're working out of, okay, I did squats last time. I did 50 pounds. I don't think I can increase this time. What could I do differently? I could try to go slower. I could try to add a pulse, just trying to think of different ways that you'd be able to implement progressive overload, because it's not always realistic to go heavier. I always like to use reverse flies as an example, because truthfully, I haven't increased my weight in those in like 5 years, and I probably never will. So it is what it is, but I know, okay, if I'm not going to increase my weight, then I need to go slower in the movement. Maybe I get all the way back. I add a little bit of a pulse. Maybe I add like 3 or 4 pulses, right? There's other ways than just lifting heavy to focus on progressive overload. You'll also notice it does focus a lot on nutrition as well. It doesn't focus a ton on cardio. So cardio is going to be important for other aspects, right? When we get to maintenance, when we're in a cut, we can absolutely sprinkle in some cardio. We don't want to do too much of it just because cardio is something that is going to spike cortisol. All working out spikes cortisol. However, I shouldn't say spikes. All working out brings cortisol up. Cardio is going to spike cortisol, right? It's not necessarily a bad thing as long as you're doing it well. So for example, when you're in maintenance, we'll absolutely like start sprinkling some cardio just to kind of make sure everything's running well, to make sure you can still be in a little bit of a deficit through expending energy, but still getting in like the nutrients, right? So you're still in taking maintenance, but you are able to be in a little bit of a deficit from getting an extra movement. But the difference is we're going to time everything well, right? We're not going to be doing cardio late at night. Cardio late at night, again, we think about spiky cortisol. We think about how that impacts sleep, little things like that that we can tweak around just to make sure that we're on the right page there. I tend to prefer doing more resistive training type cardio. So, like walking on an incline, biking at resistance. I love the rowing machine. And anytime you want to put that into your workout routine, I will absolutely 100% always say yes. I should say within reason. We're not going to do it every single time. You will also notice when you are in a cut, the goal is that we're not working out a ton, guys, because you are at a point where you're not getting in enough calories, right? In order to maintain everything. We don't want your metabolism to adjust to that. So we don't want to put you in an even further deficit. So we do try to stay clear of too much cardio and too much even lifting when we're in a cut, right? When you're thinking about losing weight or losing body fat, 80% of this is nutrition. Fitness definitely has a time and a place, and I never want to say it's not important. It is 1000% important. It will help you get there faster. It'll help you build muscle mass. It helps with mental health. It helps with other health metrics. But in terms of just looking at body fat, a lot of this is coming from nutrition, right? When we're in too much of a deficit and then we continue to be in a larger deficit from too much in terms of movement, that can be detrimental. So when we are in a cut, workouts do change. I know a couple of you guys are doing 5 workouts right now, and that'll probably go down to like 3 or 4 while in a cut. And I know that seems super scary. But again, we don't want to put too much stress on the body because that means hormones are then working against you again, right? So it's very particular in each phase to make sure that you're kind of following this same plan, not just for nutrition and calories, but also from a fitness standpoint. So how are we feeling so far? As soon as I said workouts are going down, I just saw like faces sink. So I
I
want
know.
to hear especially from you, girl. So I know, like, for me personally, and I know, like, one of my first huddles I even shared, my win was that I took a recovery day that day, which I know seems super silly, but that's still something I'm working on because I absolutely love working out. I'm biased, but I do love working out, but I like it more for the mental health benefits more than the physical, right? So for me, the physical is nice, but like the mental health is the reason why I show up every day. And I think for me, sometimes it can be hard to step back and take a break. So I know that when I was in my cut, having to step back, that was really difficult for me. And it was difficult to trust that I was doing the right thing, trust the process, as they say. But again, looking at it from a hormonal perspective and thinking about how that is making your hormones now work more against you when you're doing too much of it, right? It's too much of a good thing. So we just want to kind of pump the brakes just slightly. Sound okay? Any other questions with that? I'm seeing frowns when I say that. Okay. So let's chat a little bit about kind of in terms of the progression of things, right? So again, almost everyone starts in a retrain, and this is so dependent on where you're coming from. It could be a retrain of 1,000 calories. It could be a retrain of 200 calories, right? I very rarely put people in maintenance. It's really if they just come in and they're eating enough already. I do feel like in terms of macros, I have been very blessed with people that come in and they are crushing protein right out of the gate, which is always so fun to see. And that makes it significantly easier, right? If we can get protein down and we can get fiber and we can get our calorie consistency, we can very easily start gradually moving our way on up to maintenance, right? When we get up to maintenance, that is when it is so imperative for you guys, again, to fill out check-ins to like the best of your ability. And then especially if and when, depending on your goals, we do go into a cut, that is so important to keep up with because there have been times where I've brought people into a cut too soon. People tell me in maintenance, like, I'm feeling great, energy's great, hunger cues are there, sleep is great, all the things are great, we're checking all the boxes, we've been there for 2 months, cool, let's bring you down into a cut. Immediately they're not having hunger cues. All right, we got to go back up to maintenance for a little bit. And I know that's not what you want to hear. Please don't lie on your check-in forms about hunger cues, because that is really important, right? In terms of hunger cues, that is, I say it so much. And like, if you get nothing else out of this program, just tattoo this in your brain. Hunger cues are the biggest indicator that your metabolism is working or it's not working, right? Hunger cues is the very first thing. After that is when you start to have everything else. So I know I've talked about, again, from the brain down to the muscles in your toes, just kind of everything slowing down. I tend to always use the same examples, but if you think about someone who is heavily restricting their dietary intake, then they're probably always cold just because circulation isn't moving as fast, right? Their blood's not moving as fast. They are probably bloated and crampy and have GI distress a lot, and that's just because digestive system has slowed down significantly. They're probably a little bit more forgetful, right? Just because they're not getting as much energy or as much glucose up to the brain. They're probably feeling really like achy, not being able to build muscle mass, all the very common symptoms. You guys know them. I don't want you to ever get to that point. I don't want you to ever fill out your check-in and be like, I just feel so achy. My energy sucks. I'm so stressed. I'm not sleeping. I'm not hungry. That's like my worst nightmare to see. Because that also means then we have to have the conversation of, we're going to increase your calories, and then you're not happy with me, and it's just a lose-lose for everybody. So please, as always, be honest about hunger cues, because again, there have been times we drop it down too quickly and we just have to bring it back up to maintenance for a little bit longer. It's so dependent on how long your current habits have been, right? So for someone who's been under eating for a year, that's going to be a significantly faster cut versus someone who has been, yo-yo dieting or under eating for 7 years, right? So it really just depends on your past history. And I don't say that to freak you guys out. I say it to be as like honest and transparent as I can as to why we do this for a year. Is just because it takes your body a long time to adjust, which is not a bad thing, right? Because if you think about it being reversed, we certainly wouldn't want that reversed, right? We wouldn't want to gain weight every time we had a piece of cake, just like we're not going to lose weight every time we don't eat a piece of cake, right? So hopefully that makes sense there. And then depending on if you want to go into a build or not, it overall depends on what your goals are, right? Typically what I do is retrain, maintenance, we go up into a build, back to maintenance, and then we'll go into a cut. Because again, the build, you not only are building muscle mass, you are also building body fat a little bit as well, because you're in a surplus and it happens. But again, we try to minimize that as much as we can by focusing on progressive overload, by focusing on protein consumption. Typically protein does get a little bit higher in a build. I tend to, especially we get up to maintenance, and I tend to be around like body weight in terms of grams of protein. With a build, I'll go a little bit more. There's really not a lot of research saying that it's beneficial to go more than 1.2 grams for body weight. So I don't tend to go beyond that, just because I'd rather you be using those calories for other macros as well. You will notice as you do start, because with retrains, I do really heavily focus on protein. There are certain ways to increase metabolism, right? So the obvious one, why we're in a retrain, we are increasing calories. So that is going to increase your metabolism. That's number one for increasing metabolism. Number two, we can focus on eating more frequently. So instead of like 3 larger meals a day, having, like 5 smaller meals throughout the day, or having still those 3 larger meals, but having snacks throughout the day will also increase your metabolism, and it will also help to regulate out blood sugar levels as well. There is hydration. If you guys ever wonder why I talk so much about hydration and why I have goals of hydration all the time, it's one, the importance, because I'm always increasing fiber for people, but two, dehydration is a way to slow down your metabolism. And then number 4, protein consumption. The more protein you have, the more muscle mass, the faster your metabolism is. So that's my goal with retrain. That is all about just we're boosting your metabolism, we're getting everything in check, we get up to maintenance. This is kind of like the neutral ground of everything's working well, our body's going to adjust to this, and then we can deviate from there. All right, guys, any questions? How are we feeling? I'm sorry I just talked at you for like 40 minutes straight.
I guess I do have a question. So let's say we're on maintenance and we want to be at maintenance. Like, I'm just getting a little confused because I know you're saying, oh, you do a cut and the build, but if you're at maintenance, it's like, how long did you say we can be at maintenance? It just depends, or
Yeah, so great question. It really does depend. Like on here, it says typically around like 2 to 3 months, but
oh,
it's
I see.
dependent on, again, I don't want you to like take these dates and like think of them as
Mm-hmm.
like set in stone by any means. It's not that black and white. It's dependent on what you've been doing. So like someone who's, again, only been in a calorie restriction, or maybe someone that comes in and they've just been like, I've never tracked anything. I eat intuitively. I eat enough. I have hunger cues. They're coming from a good spot. We might only be in maintenance for 2 months. And then we're like, all right, let's go. Let's make moves. Let's, either cut or build, whatever the goals are. Versus someone that comes to me and they're like, it's been 10 years. I haven't been able to lose weight. I'm eating 800 calories. Then that might be potentially even longer than 3 months. It might be 4 or 5, just depending. It's just dependent on how long and how much your hormones are working against you. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense.
It's very different for everyone, and the only way I'm able to tell this, two things. One, obviously, it's one of the amazing reasons why we partner with Equalife, is because we're able to see all your hormones and kind of that baseline of where they're at, which is always great. If you did keep up with that, obviously we'd be able to kind of see where hormones were at. You certainly don't have to. Another way is the weekly check-ins. Again, if you're answering those questions of like, my sleep is great, my stress is spectacular, I'm not, or not spectacular, but I'm not having stress, I guess I should say. I'm having hunger cues. I'm hungry throughout the day. I don't feel like overly full. Like I don't really feel stressed. Like all the good things, right? That I want to see. Then we're gonna be like, okay, maybe let's give it another week or two. We'll just make sure that we're consistent here. And if we are, then we can drop you down into a cut or a build, just depending.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, that was a very, again, vague answer. I think it's hard to talk about these things on group calls because everyone's just on their own journey too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, again, it's very dependent on your own personal history and kind of how long you've been in things. But for maintenance, I don't know if I've ever, trying to think of the longest I've ever had someone in maintenance. Um, Goodness, I feel like I have had people be in maintenance for probably close to like 6 months, but I would say most people, it's around like the 3 month mark at most.
Okay.
Um, but for a lot of people, even coming from a retrain, you do start to, oops, sorry, I don't know how to get that to go away. You do start to see some changes as you get closer to maintenance. So for some people, I have had people who have jumped into a program like this and they've already been very close to maintenance. They've been tracking a good amount of time, which is great. They're already super close to that number. And they do start to see those changes already just because their body's ramping up. They are, if they were, like if their body were functioning at an optimal level, they're actually eating less than that. So you're actually able to see those changes before they even get to maintenance. So it is very possible to still see changes in the retrain phase.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions, comments, concerns, anything they'd like to share?
Um, I do.
Yeah, what's up?
Sorry. Okay,
No,
so
no.
when it comes to a cut, because I've heard, and I'm not sure because I've never obviously done it, but I've heard that sometimes when if you want to do a cut, that it's best to do it when, let's say, you're not on a vacation. You don't when you're not on vacation or like during the summer, because obviously you do a lot of gatherings, family things. There's a lot of food. So when I know it depends on every person, but what would you recommend based on, on your advice that it's the best time to do a cut?
I really feel like it depends on how motivated the person is. I have had people who have, come to me a lot with struggles of summer events, and I've had people breeze through them. So I think it's really just dependent on your level of motivation. I don't think summer should ever be something that holds you back. I don't think, in terms of being in a cut, it's definitely beneficial to continue tracking, right? Because you want to make sure you stay in that deficit. It's very easy to overestimate calories. But also being at social gatherings, it's harder to know those things, right? You're doing a little
Mm-hmm.
more of a job of guesstimating where those are, which is also another reason why we do like hone in so much on, okay, the importance of tracking, the importance of MyFitnessPal early on. So you're better able to kind of gauge those things when you're out at a social gathering, right? Or using your hand as measuring. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that, but it's like your palm
Mm-hmm.
your protein, your 3 ounces, right? If you cup your hand, that's gonna be your or not your veggies, I'm sorry, your carbs, your starchy carbs if you cup, or 1 cup if you fist is going to be, your veggies, and then your fat is the serving size of your thumb. So that's something that you could potentially use too. But my point to that is I don't think there's a right or wrong time of the year to do it. I think it's just dependent on if someone's motivated. If someone knows that they're not going to be successful in the summer, even with the support of this program, we can absolutely hold off. But I don't think it should be a reason to hold off.
Okay.
If you're going on a long vacation, that might be a little different, because I always tell people, you know, if you're going to like Italy, for example, and you want to eat pasta and they're very well known for carbs and wine, you know, you should enjoy those things. Things are a little bit lighter over there. Things are made a lot cleaner over there. So you're probably not nearly eating as many calories, or you're not putting your body in as much stress as you would in the States. But I still don't. I personally would not want to track if I was like on an extended vacation. Good question.
Makes sense.
Yeah, it's the first time anyone's ever asked me that. All right, guys, what other questions do we have? Or is everything just making sense? Yeah?
Yeah, I'm just excited. I'm like,
You're
I
so
just want to get there.
And that's awesome, because it's the faster you get to maintenance, the faster we can make things happen, right? It's not really meant to be a time when you gain or lose weight. You might change body composition, but weight-wise, you're not really changing a lot, but we can really, you know, make a lot of differences in these 2 phases here. But if you get nothing else from this, just know this is why we do weekly check-ins and why they're so important to fill out, and to fill out accurately, especially when we get to these levels here. But just from this, do we all feel confident with where you are at in terms of your journey? Are there any questions around that? If you're comfortable asking, if not, you can always privately message me too. But do we feel comfortable in being like, if I were to ask you right now, would you know what phase you're in?
I think so.
Okay. Perfect. Again, please feel free to privately message me if you want to, and I'm more than happy to go over that. I do think I'm going to go over this on everyone's next call anyway, just to make sure everyone's on the same page with kind of where they're at, including you 3 ladies as well. But we do have about 15 minutes. Did anyone have any final questions on this, or any questions on literally anything else?
Mm, no. Well, no, I just have, well, no questions, but I do have to share. Okay, so today I had to go to the office. So I also work from home. And we had a social gathering, a business social gathering at a restaurant. So it was a little bit challenging. But I think I was able to pull through, because I even took my lunch, but I didn't get to eat my lunch because then I was the only one that brought lunch. So we went to the restaurant and I ordered just chicken with beans, but they gave me refried beans, so I didn't eat the refried beans. So I just had the chicken. So which that was what I had for my meal plan for today, chicken for lunch. And when I got to the office, then I just ate my rice. But I'm like, okay, I tried. I tried really, really hard, to kind of like move outside my little bubble of control everything that I eat. But it's a little challenging, but I'm trying.
It is hard, and you definitely need to give yourself some grace with that one, because I mean, out of everything you could have ordered at that restaurant, I'm sure there were worse things that you could have gotten than chicken.
Yes.
But you know, that's a huge part of this program too, is I want you to be able to go out, and I want you to have these social gatherings at work, especially because you do work from home. You probably don't see these people all too often, or if you do, it's always
Hmm.
via Zoom. And so, I mean, it'd be like the equivalent if if someone were in Denver and you guys wanted to be like, hey, let's go grab lunch. I'm not going to be like, okay, well, I'm expecting you to like bring your own lunch and maybe we'll do a picnic instead. Like, no, you should be able to enjoy yourself when you're out and about. It's just making sure that you're aware when you're at restaurants, like what is the best option. And if there are no good options, let's say you're going to like a fried chicken place, right? Where that's literally all they have is like fried chicken and like mac and cheese. Do they have something, literally anything on the menu that contains fiber? Like that's just all I want you to be thinking about when you are in those situations when you're completely out of control of your food. And I think you did a really good job of that, of like, okay, well, I don't really want refined beans. Personally, I just don't like them. I know they're not good for you, but I don't know what it is. I love normal beans, but I just don't like the consistency or texture. I just can't do it. Um, but I think that's a really great example of like you still enjoyed yourself when you were in the social gathering, but then you still made those compromises of like, this isn't really a food I enjoy, and I know it's going to kind of set me back. So I'm just going to have the rice when I get back. Is great.
So my question is, like, I get to the end of the day and I have, let's say, 200 calories left, and it's all carbs or it's all protein, and I'm done with fat or over on fat and I'm over on whatever the opposite one is, right? Carbs or protein. Like, what do you suggest? Like today I have all carbs left, which everyone wants to have that problem, right? So my plan is fruit, but would there be other things you might
Dates.
recommend?
Dates are, and they have a lot of carbs, and they're really good.
I do love dates.
Yeah.
The only hard part about having nothing but carbs left is I feel like it's very easy to reach for simple carbs.
Oh, it's very easy to reach for a chocolate bar or
Well, silver lining, chocolate has magnesium, which will help you sleep. So that's a plus. But yeah, no, I think especially at night, you definitely want to try your best to steer clear of those simple carbs just because it will interrupt your sleep. It spikes cortisol. And so that's something that could potentially interrupt your sleep, I should say.
well,
But
that's
yeah,
just today's problem. Some days it's like all protein and no carbs. So it's like, like I just end up a little out of balance at the end of the day. I'm not typically super hungry. It's just reflective of the stage that I'm in. But it's like, do I get yelled at for not finishing my calories or do I eat something bad?
And it's funny because I do get asked this a lot, and I do feel like it ends up being like protein is the one that's always like, I still have 40 grams of protein and I
Oh,
have
that's not a problem for me usually.
Me either. I'm like, I wish
oh,
I had more
good,
protein.
good. And Monica, I know it's not a problem for you either. You girls crush it with protein. When that happens, I would say, remember, this is why we have a range, right? So I'm never expecting you to be like, okay, your number is 1600. I expect you to hit 1600 every single time. It's 15 to 1700. And your macros have a range too. So I never want you to feel like you are like have to hit exactly 140 grams of protein. If you happen to be 130, you're still in the right direction. You're still doing amazing things. And I would put you in closer to like, when we were talking on our onboarding call about like the 10-80-10, like it's more that 80% of women that start the program that still see those changes. It's just maybe a little bit slower, right? Because you're not hitting everything consistently. When that happens, and I can send you, I have this document of like protein dominant, carb dominant, and fat dominant foods, and then kind of where they overlap as well. So I'll send that to you, and hopefully that'll give you a little inspiration of foods that you can eat. But also keep in mind, this is the tricky part, is that you have to have nutrients together to absorb them. So if you have something that's super protein dominant and has absolutely no carbs or fat in it, yes, you're still absorbing protein, but not nearly as much as you think. So keeping that in mind too, of like, I don't want you to feel like I have to have something that is strictly carbohydrates, right? So making sure that you're always pairing it with something else. Like if you wanted to get like a banana, for example, putting like a little bit of peanut butter on there. Because even if you go over a little bit on fat, it's completely okay. You have a range.
Okay.
It's a good question. Monica, did you have a question, my dear?
No, just more of a comment. I'm glad that you pointed out the things that you look at in our check-ins that resonate with you as a coach, like those talking points that have the most weight. So I appreciate those. So I'll try to get my thesaurus out and be much more descriptive and pay attention to those, because sometimes it's not normal prior to this program to hear my stomach gurgle in a good way. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, there's my hunger cue. I better go eat.
Yep.
So
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
that's a great comment to make, and I appreciate you saying that because I know on check-ins a lot of times when I see hunger cubes, I'm always like my favorite question. So I know you guys know I love that one, but there are a lot of important questions on there. They all do serve a purpose. It's not just meant to like waste your time. It's not just meant for you to be reflective, but it's meant for me to see those things too. Um, and then especially when you are in a cut, keeping in mind that you will have that stomach growling and it's normal, right? I know it's not a comfortable feeling, but when you get used to, again, let's say your maintenance is 2,500. If you're used to 2,500 and I'm dropping you down to 2,000, you're going to be a little hungry throughout the day. And that's a good thing. I know it sounds backwards, but it is a good thing. You want to have hunger cues, especially, I mean, throughout all of it, but especially when you are in a cut. Again, that's a telltale sign for me if you're not having hunger cues in a cut, that your metabolism still is not where it should be, and we're going to bump you back up to maintenance for probably another month and then try again.
Okay.
But great comment to make. I do look at them, I promise, guys. With my like 20, 30-minute looms. I don't know if you guys knew this. They're supposed to be 5 minutes. I don't know if I've ever done one that's 5 minutes. So hopefully you guys enjoy that.
I do.
If you ever feel like, Kate, you're talking too much, please just let me know and I'll try to be a little bit better about keeping it down to like 5 to 10 minutes.
You
But
just
that's
have to
all.
remember, we all paid a small fortune for this. So like, if you want to talk away.
I appreciate that. I do. Yeah, I just feel like I get like like you were saying earlier, I just get so like excited about things and it's like I see something on like someone's food diary and I just like want to make all these comments. I'm like, okay, I need to pump the brakes a little bit because I'm giving someone that just started like 20 goals. Like maybe I should take a step back here. But as you guys probably have been able to guess, I just really love to educate. It's like my favorite thing. I teach in a grad dietetics program, so I just like thoroughly enjoy like every aspect of education. And it's by far my favorite part of this job is doing stuff like this and just being able to educate on nutrition. Because I don't think it's common sense to know all these things. And like reading labels, for example, as you guys know, I love reading labels. And so anytime you need a label to be read, let me know and I will go into great detail about it.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's really good information. And I mean, I've always been reading the labels, but I've never paid attention as to like the ingredients and the order of the ingredients. I
Mhm.
didn't know that. And now it's like I pay more attention. And I'm actually even telling my daughter, I'm like, okay, because now she wants to be vegetarian and she's trying to get this like, chicken, right? Like a chicken flavor. I'm like, okay, let's look at the ingredients.
I love
And
that.
that's the first thing that I saw. And I'm like, okay, no, look at the ingredients. See, if you can't pronounce it, you don't know what it is, it's not good. That's how, that's the
Always a
easiest
good
way I
rule of
can
thumb.
tell her.
You can't pronounce it. It's
Yeah, if you
86.
can't pronounce it, don't even get it. So, I'm trying to teach her all of this. So at least, because she's a teenager, and of course, teenagers they eat whatever they want. They at least most of them. And she's at this stage where she's like, I'm a teenager. What do you expect? I want junk food, but I'm trying to teach her. Okay, look at the labels.
Eat
Look at
raspberries
eat
first.
raspberries. Yes, yes. Yes, I made her that protein pasta and I said, okay, get a couple of raspberries. And she's like, okay, and she's enjoying it too. So I am learning a lot.
I love
It's
how
really
everyone
good.
eats raspberries so much.
None of us will leave your program not understanding the value of raspberries.
Yes.
Oh, you know what? If you get nothing else from this, that will help with so many things. I swear it helps so much with just getting everything in check. But that really, I'm so glad you said that because it is one of my favorite parts of this program that when people like tell me, oh, I got my husband involved or my kiddos involved, or like I'm trying to get them to understand nutrition more. And it's like this kind of stuff, like I love when it's shared. So like always tell me when you do stuff like that because it just makes my heart so happy.
No, thank you.
But any other last questions, comments, concerns? All
No,
right. On
not on
our
my end.
on my next calls with you ladies, I'm going to ask you what phase you're in, and I'm expecting you all to have an answer. So make sure you know which one you're in. I feel like it's better for everyone just to know and just be well educated and kind of like what your game plan is. And when we do get on our next calls with just individually, we'll go over kind of your individual game plan as well. So just everyone's on the same page with everything.
Okay,
Cool.
sounds good. Yeah, thank
All
you.
right,
Thank you so
guys.
much.
Yes, absolutely. I know Spencer made dinner, so I'm gonna go enjoy some dinner. But I hope you guys have a wonderful night, and I will talk to you all tomorrow.
Okay,
All right.
Thank
Thank you.
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 Take care. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.